Tim Black. Tim Black. Tim Black. Yes, I am.
Hey, how you doing? This is Tim Black. Welcome to Black News, Progressive News. Tim Black tonight. I'm here with presidential candidate, presumptive nominee for the Green Party, none other than Dr. Jill Stein. Jill, how are you doing?
Well, in your presence, I'm like doing better than ever.
Thank you so much. You know, I'm seeing so much media coverage for you. I just want to know, how are you feeling now? Before they were kind of not so warm. Now it's like everyone wants to talk to Jill.
It's pretty incredible. I feel like, I feel incredibly honored. I feel like the work that we have been doing on the front lines, suddenly they're recognizing it. And, the media is suddenly giving us a bigger megaphone for us to lift up the struggles that you and other frontline leaders have been fighting forever, for centuries, basically.
Right.
But
right.
The struggle of justice, it's kind of come home to roost in a much bigger way now. Everybody's in the target areas. People are paying attention. Black Lives Matter has done such an unbelievable job of mobilizing people, mobilizing the hearts and minds and conscience of the nation. And so we have this incredible, window of opportunity right now. Hearts are kind of like riveted on these stories coming out of the Black Lives Matter movement. We have an incredible opportunity. Now that the media is paying attention, we really have a chance to change the dialogue, to create a real framework that's going to get to the root of the problem, a real truth and reconciliation process to understand this living legacy of the criminal institution of slavery that our country was founded on. We got a deep challenge here, and I almost, I'm sort of in awe of what's happening now, I gotta say, I can't get my arms around it. It feels like it's bigger than us.
Yes. Yes. I agree with you. That's exactly how I feel. Even being here and talking to you right now, I just feel like once you put the focus on something bigger than ourselves, that's when the growth really happens. But you've been doing that for so long, Jill.
Well, but it's like it didn't kind of get to lift off speed. Now it's like it's lifted off, and it just feels like we are finding each other. That we who are, the servants of this cause. Right. We're all connecting, and it's like a family reunion, and
wow.
And it's like we're finding home, and home feels so good, and it feels like we have so much power together.
Wow, the way she framed that, she said servants of this. That's a totally different tack than you're going to hear from any other politician. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now in the 2016 election. When you brought up Black Lives Matter, it reminded me of Baltimore. And we're right now, recently, they just, acquitted or decided not to charge a number of the officers, and it's after Freddie Gray, which is, got a lot of people wondering, what are we going to do? What does a Jill Stein presidency look like addressing criminal justice or holding police accountable, not all police, but police accountable for deaths in their custody?
Yes. This is not rocket science, we can begin to take first steps, and then we need to take deeper steps too, because police violence is the tip of the iceberg, of the violence of racism in every sector of society. So there are many things that we need to do. But to begin to get a handle on police violence, this shouldn't be like a problem. Why are we stuck dealing with this? We know what it takes. There was a commission after Ferguson that recommended some very simple steps. We need civilian review boards for every community so that communities control their police, not police controlling their communities. So we need to have citizen control, and that includes the power to hire and fire, and it also includes the subpoena power to actually find out what's going on, so that we actually have accountability and we truly have democratic control. We also need to have investigators that are available to every community, so it doesn't require kind of a miracle in Washington, D.C. in order to find out what happened. Every death, in my view, at the hands of police needs to be investigated. Exactly. Because there's just way too many. Most police forces around the world don't have this kind of track record. So we need to have full accountability, and that will only happen once we are routinely investigating all deaths. Third, we need to demilitarize our approach to policing. So in advance of these conventions, we've seen more riot gear, more troopers brought in. That's not the way to go. We need police who are from the community, who look like the community. Richmond, California is a really good example of a community that did right by their police force for the community. Not coincidentally, this is where they have a green mayor, or they had a green mayor for 8 years till she turned out, Gail McLaughlin. And among other great things she did was bring in a commissioner who moved into the community, got the police out of their cars, walking, staying on the same beat, so they actually got to know people and became a resource for the community, not sort of a hostile, occupying, scary force in a car with a lot of armaments. They also trained them up in de-escalation techniques and really put a focus on that. And one thing I think for us to look at, I don't think we're ready to go here yet, but it's maybe something to aim towards. There are many countries around the world that they disarm their police, and they find, in fact, the police are safer and the community is safer when the police are not wearing arms, because then they become a target. Everybody gets afraid of everybody else, and that's when the shooting starts. And we're all in the crosshairs now, including the police themselves, who've been the victims of, tragic responses to this violence. So we need to cool it all out, and we need to address the underlying problem of just systemic racism in and of itself.
Wow. And just to follow up on that, how does that look when we have a number of guns on the street as is? That's another issue.
Right.
Do you have like an idea of, I don't know, where do you fall on gun rights? Guns, like, I'm pretty sure you're against assault rifles. But
well, I'm a green,
Yeah.
so I believe in nonviolence, So I don't have a lot of faith that arming ourselves makes us safe.
Right. Statistically, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
If you have a gun, you're more likely to have it used on you or by an intruder or on yourself, which is very much underreported. So
that's right, and
that is killer with guns.
That is the public health statistic. I think the risk of being harmed by a gun actually goes up. Well, let me say this. It doubles. The risk of being harmed by a gun doubles if you have a gun in the home. But the odds that it will be used on you or a family member are 22 times greater, not just double, 22 times greater that it be used to harm you or a family member or a household member as opposed to an intruder or somebody who wants to harm you. So this is a public relations campaign. This is an advertising campaign by the weapons industry that just, same thing is going on internationally, that we're selling lots of weapons around the world. It's making the world a place we can't live in, This is not just unsafe, this is becoming absolutely unlivable. So, I think confidence building, community building is what we need to do. We are living in a garrison state right now, and where there's a lot of fear. And that's why we also have to address the whole issue of racism now, which fans the flames of fear. And I think we have to also, things are connected. We also have to deal with the incredible economic misery and injustice that makes people afraid of each other and wanting to blame each other. So these are all interconnected, and so there's a broader context for this. But I think zeroing in on the dangers of guns are very important. And for starters, we need background checks, so that guns are not getting into the hands of domestic abusers, for example, who are likely to use those guns against, their relationship, and likely to use those guns, as we've seen out on the street and in mass violence as well. So we need to know who is it that wants to buy a gun. We need to end assault rifles. There's no reason to have military gear out on our street. We are not in a state of war. And we need to end the immunity of the gun industry and the distributors. They need to be held accountable. If we just start with that, we move forward. At the same time, we have to address this underlying economic misery and racism that has created this garrison state.
Wow, amazing. Just to switch gears a little bit, it's no secret that Bernie Sanders, one of the problems that he had was attracting people of color to the polls. What's the Jill Stein plan for addressing that and and avoiding that happening with your campaign?
Our campaign needs to be of service. We need to be composed of a diverse group of people, and we are. And, our agenda has been about racial justice from the start. In fact, one of our early campaign managers, who then had some health issues, he had to drop back, but helped us formulate policies at the outset, is Kali Akuno with the Project Jackson, and also working with the Malcolm X Grassroots movement, so that we were sure to build into our agenda the foundations of racial justice as a core part of how we solve these problems. We don't solve the problems of our economy, our health, environmental racism, etc. The segregation of our schools and the privatization, the theft of public schools, right, the theft of housing in gentrified communities. Right. I mean, these are all racial and economic injustice problems that are just joined at the hip. So, we have a national action plan for racial justice now that basically addresses what needs to be done.
Get that word out and let people know exactly what your plans are and what you have in place.
And working with the likes of grassroots organizers like you and Black Men for Bernie, sure, Cornel West, who's working closely with our campaign, Mark Lamont Hill.
Right.
We have some just incredibly wonderful.
Killer Mike to come through.
Oh yes. Nice. Oh, that would be awesome. I would love to reach out to him.
So we need to reach out to him.
I would love to do that. Yes.
Speaking of economics, let's talk jobs.
Great.
I looked at your website and I noticed your Green Deal.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about it for anyone who doesn't know what your Green Deal comprises of?
Sure. So the Green New Deal is this program. It's like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression, except it's also green. So it fixes two crises, both the crisis of our economy and the crisis of climate. And guess what? Both of those crises hit hardest in communities of color. So they're absolutely wrapped up in how we redress these racial injustices, climate and environmental injustice, and economic injustice. It calls for creating 20 million jobs, good wage jobs that begin at $15 an hour and go up from there. These are jobs that transition us on an emergency basis to 100% clean, renewable energy, wind, water, and sun. So it's good for workers,
yes,
it's good for communities, it's good for our water supply and our air, because who gets hit harder, with environmental racism? It's communities of color and poor communities, right, where all these, polluting plants and toxic waste sites and dirty transfer stations are all located.
Exactly.
So it gets rid of all that stuff, so that all we have is healthy energy out there, and right, it creates 20 million jobs. That's enough for everyone who needs a job to have a job. So we basically say that this should be a human right to have a job. And it will be nationally funded, but locally controlled. So it's not your big developer who swoops in and says, we need...
brings his people with them, or he or she brings the people
exactly
with them. Sometimes the people in the community
That's
don't
right.
get the jobs.
That's right. And in fact, some of the rules that frame this are that both the decision-making is community-based, so it's not $1 per vote, it's one person per vote, through a facilitated process.
What a concept.
It's a process called participatory budgeting, which is actually used successfully in lots of communities around the country and around the world, so that it basically weeds out the big money players, and it provides funding for projects that the community decides it needs in order to be sustainable, not just environmentally, but socially, economically, and racially, for that matter. So if it's affordable housing, then we create the jobs creating the affordable housing. If it is, creating a solar factory or a wind factory, then the funds are there to create that factory. It would create jobs for small businesses, for worker cooperatives, for nonprofits, and for direct government jobs. So it's a whole spectrum of what the community can decide to do. The question always comes up, how do you fund it? And this is the really good news. when we have 100% clean renewable energy, and I should back up just to mention, it also creates a healthy food supply so that we get rid of the food deserts. We support local farmers, local co-ops, family farming, all those things we used to have, and in which the African American community really led the way after, slavery and Reconstruction. The African American community developed self-sufficiency in all kinds of ways, including, Washington Carver.
Oh yeah,
George Washington Carver. Yes, who really had an incredible
impact, right?
Yes, in sustainable farming and developing a whole tradition of African American family farming. So this would provide subsidies for that again, and instead of funding the big agribusiness food, which makes us sick in a very big way.
It does. Yeah.
Instead, we would be funding local farmers, fresh food, local food, get rid of the food deserts. So it's energy, it's food, and it's public transportation so that we no longer have these automobiles clogging our streets, making it too dangerous to walk, very unpleasant, noisy, polluted. Instead, we could start walking to school, to our jobs, and to transit hubs. So we would have a right to recreation as a form of transportation. How about that?
Amazing. It's amazing. Pretty amazing.
We could actually use muscle power and get healthy.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways.
Yes. So the bottom line is, the good news is that when we actually put our dollars into healthy food, energy, and transportation, we get so much healthier that it massively reduces our healthcare costs.
I was thinking that, right.
And we spend right now $3 trillion a year on this sick care system that's not making us healthier. We're actually getting sicker. 1 in every 2 Americans now has a chronic disease. We are a very sick society, spending more than any other country around the world. 1 in 2 Americans now has a form of chronic disease, whether it's high blood pressure or a learning disability or asthma or cancer or heart attacks and strokes. This is the way we live, or diabetes, which is the new big one now, too.
Could it be the food?
Well, there's no doubt it has a lot to do with the food. And it's not just, oh, you're eating more food. It's not just, blame the victim, but it's also that we've been denied healthy food. We are in a food system which is all about generating profit. It turns out it makes us really sick. And when Cuba lost their oil pipeline when the Soviet Union broke up in the early 1990s, all of a sudden they had to switch to green energy because they didn't have any fuel to burn, and they had to switch to muscle-powered transportation and to a healthy, organic food supply. Their economy is crashing, so you'd think, their health would have taken a nosedive because everybody's stressed.
Wow.
But what actually happened, their death rate from diabetes went down 50%. Their death rate from heart attacks and strokes went down about 30%. These were like health miracles that we can't buy in this country for $3 trillion a year, and they had a health miracle for $0 just by greening their food, transportation, and energy systems. So this is the good news about the Green New Deal. It pays for itself both in our savings in healthcare, but there's another way it pays for itself as well. There's more. It gets even better. It turns out when you have 100% renewable energy, an infinite energy store, you no longer need to have 1,000 military bases in over 100 countries around the world in order to take other people's energy supply and secure routes of transportation. In many ways, the war in Syria is a proxy war over who's going to get to put their pipeline through Syria and supply Europe. So if instead of pouring half of our budget into the military, we put those dollars into greening our economy, and we could actually talk to the Russians about this, and we could talk to the Chinese about this, because they can't afford their military either. Both of their economies are struggling, and they're also struggling with the devastation of climate change. So instead of, taking ourselves over the cliff here, we could actually demilitarize our budgets, our economies, and our foreign policy. We can do that as the U.S. We could cut our military in half, and we're still way bigger than
Right.
China and everybody else in the world.
Right.
So we can do the right thing, but we can also do it in a way that engages the other countries around the world, too. They need to do this for the same reasons. So this just gets better and better all the time.
Jill, this has been a fantastic conversation. I know you have, like I said in the beginning, she had so many media folks at her door now. Look, thank you so much for giving us the time.
Oh, thank you,
we
Tim.
appreciate you. It's remarkable. Guys, go to Jill Stein's website. That's Jill2016.
It's Jill2016.com.
Jill2016.com. Do that, guys. Find out more about the Green Deal. I encourage you. And it's been a pleasure, Jill. Thank you.